Hello, welcome to Empathy Power Up. Hey, Amy.
Oh, Kevin, nice to see you.
Yeah, as we're all coming back from this long weekend, at least in United States, welcome back to this Tuesday. We all need this little power up to get us through the week and just get this conversation going for empathy. And I love the term again, the rise of empathy and empathy rising that we talked about. And we've been talking, and this is the sixth week where this journey that we're going through that kicked off with Amy's story, and this powerful movement, and that sort of you can see the parallels as we are bringing in parts of lessons from the story and the book that in her book Empathy for Change, which you should check out. You should be learning about it now. In our last part, we're going to talk. We're going to sort of try to wrap it all up and bring this full circle. So, Amy, I am all yours. I'm excited.
Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. And hello, everybody, and welcome to our Empathy Power Up. I love that you put your hands up there. You're like, it's story time. I love this. So like you said, today I'm going to be talking to you. It's the last of the 6-part series. And this is the elephant in the room that a lot of us don't talk about, but especially in the workplaces. So I've been focusing a lot recently, listening to a lot of podcasts about movement making. And that is a really interesting conversation happens in movement making, right? When you talk about the AIDS epidemic and ACT UP, right? As an example, right? So they did talk about power and how do you share power. But in the workplace, that's not a conversation we have all that much, right? Where we talk about sharing power. So that is the elephant in the room today that we're going to be talking about. And I say it's the elephant in the room because it is there, but we don't talk about it. Like a lot of things in culture, we don't talk about the things that are there, right? It's like in my book, I talk about how there's this cultural iceberg, right? Above, you get to see the norms and things like that, but then there's a lot of things underneath, like the surface, like an iceberg, that you don't see, that you can't really put your finger on it, but it doesn't make sense, like things like microaggressions. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about that. Opening up my presentation from before, these are a compilation of the last 2 blog posts, which I'm going to be launching later this week. That's going to talk about, how do we do activating, achieving and lasting change in our organizations. So, like I mentioned, empathy is, power is one of the main reasons why we don't have empathy in the world in our workplaces. And to unpack this a little bit more, it's a lot of us talk about, when you're trying to make change, you're trying to empower others to take action. And it's not very specific. It's kind of like, when we talk about empathy, we talk about how empathy is you just step into somebody else's shoes and you're like, but what does that mean? How do I interpret that? So I wanted to get some explanations into what is power? I have a whole chapter I devoted to power because it's so important. And I found this lovely book from Just Associates in 2007. They wrote this book called Making Change Happen. And they're taking this idea from movement building and bringing it in to the common conversation. And they talk about 4 different kinds of power. So they talk about power over, where you have one group has power over someone else, which is often what we have, especially when you talk about colonization, when you talk about war and famine and all these different things. One organization has power over another. Then there's also power with. So power with is where you start having shared power between it. It's like the power differential is more equal, and you share that power. And sometimes there's different levels of power you can share within that. And then there's power within ourselves. So many of us, when we talk about empowering others, we often think about creating the power within them to be the change they wish to see in the world. And then finally, power to. And this is something that often isn't given in the workplace and in the situations that we're in. So, to do all of this, we want to create more trust, and we want to create more idea of agency. So what is connected to power is this idea of agency. So you can't have one without the other. So agency, what they call, Just Associates calls, is the creative human capacity to act and change the world. And so when you have these different power differentials, it kind of shifts on a spectrum from power over to power to. And so, and all along the way, you kind of add this idea of power within ourselves to be that change. And often in government or many other organizations, you're trying to increase trust and agency in the world. So you have to start letting go of power and giving more agency to others. So that's a key point. And I brought this kind of concept to the Code for America Summit recently, where we talked about creating a more equitable government. And often when we talk about design and the world of design, and if you read the book, I do talk about how we should step into, and we're all designers, we're all creating the world around us, and we can step up and say, be that change. And so often we have these three words that talks about design. So we have designing for someone else. So often our world has been designed for us. So, all the systems of oppression, all the systems that are the major systems that are happening right now have been designed for us. But then there's this concept of designing with. So then, like I said, there's this power differential. So you have that equal power. And then agency is equal. So everybody has a chance to change that. And then the last one is design by. And this is kind of the next frontier that we're talking about. It's giving power to organizations, maybe to marginalized people, organizations, underinvested communities, refugees, what have you, whatever organization you're working with. And then that increases that individual agency that we have to change the world. So, wow. Yeah, it's a lot.
No, there's so many amazing takeaways in that, and such amazing moments that I reflected upon. One was the power within. I think that was so powerful, and it made me think of when folks ask how to be a better ally to Black people, or to queer people, or to people with disabilities, or people who are neurodiverse, or any other marginalized community. How do you do that? It is understanding this elephant in the room. Who is controlling the power? Who has the power? Is there a power differential? How big is that power differential? Mm-hmm. You can say, oh yeah, you have it within you. But if the system is not giving or sharing that power, that doesn't matter. And that's what allyship is. It is understanding that you are in a position of higher power, and you have to share some of that power, and it might take some away from you, and that's okay, because at the end of the day, if everyone has agency, everyone gets better together. And I think your message, I reflected to that so much. And then bringing to the design aspect, and the fact that the system has been designed for us, and it's usually the previous generations that are designing for the next few generations down, and then sort of just adding more to the current system, versus us having an agency to go and say, no, this is our system, and let us design it ourselves.
Yeah.
And that is where it's important to have people from all communities at the table when we're designing these voices that are heard from all these aspects, bringing them in. That's why I think it's important. I love that. I was so inspired by everything you said.
Yeah. And actually, like in our last session last week, I talked about Monica Kursa. She's the one working in peace building. She talks about how empathy has hands and feet. You go to where the problems are occurring, and that's one of her things that she does, is she goes directly to where the problems are occurring, talk to the people, reason with them, and try to find out what is the real issues here. And often that showed up when I was working at my old workplace of Booz Allen Hamilton. We always talked about trying to understand the problem before you jump to solutions, right?
Yeah.
That shows up very often in being like, if you don't, most of us do not understand the problem, and in the way design has historically been done, right? You're like, yeah, I get it.
No, I get it. I'm excited. Yes.
Design has historically been done. It too was designed by white people, right? By white men, usually, with their own biases and things like that that's associated with it. And then also their own mindsets, right? And like, so what we have is a great awakening, right? I'm talking about this article that I'm writing with my teammate, Joey, is like, there is a great awakening that's happening. And if we start seeing taking the smoke out of the room, but just seeing the power differential and then seeing who has it and who doesn't, but then also going back to ideas of old power and new power, right? Mm-hmm. This new power dynamic of like, it's movement making and it's people coming together to make that change. This is what is that, that's why it's the elephant in the room, because we have to kind of come to terms with power.
Oh, I love that. And I also like what you said about understanding the problem, and empathy helps us do that. So if you are in business and you are a product leader or an engineer or building products or marketing or any of these things, you're trying to message to the problem for your customers. You're trying to understand your employees' problems, and you can't solve the problem. And I learned from you when one of our initial talks, we talked about where you were working on a project to understand and help people, houseless people, and help those communities and through as part of your government work. And it was important to there were teams that were just starting solutions. Oh, let's just build this, versus even talking or understanding the problem and understanding what is the intended outcome the people want. Do they even understand that? And I think that is so powerful in how you put it. And empathy helps achieve that. And I rank empathy as the most important skill and the most important attribute that everyone in business and organization and government needs to have, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it's quite a change from where we have been in the past. You know, like I said, old power, it's top down, hierarchical, leader driven. It's telling you, like, I'm the leader, I'm the one who has power, I tell you what to do, right? And so all of these things about, like, you know, power is not just like hierarchy. Power is also like, what is my power within myself, right? We talked about imposter syndrome a while back, right? A lot of imposter syndrome is the system, right? Like, we go bringing this back in, is like the system telling us we're not good enough, right?
Yeah.
So we have to then retrain our brains to have more power within ourselves to say, you know what, I have a magic wand. I can be that designer and that person who's be the change. So it's so important.
Like a quick mini story on that. I have a person on my team, and she's a couple years into her career, and she had a little bit of that, like the imposter syndrome, like the power within. And I believed in her as her manager, as a leader. Every time I would meet, I would say, I understand she would share that she doesn't have as much confidence. And I would say, I have confidence in you. I know you're saying that, but I know because I've seen the potential. You have confidence. And then weeks later, she's this amazing, confident person and delivering amazing work. And then she comes back and says, it's because you believed in me. And it's because you had confidence in me that now I have confidence in myself. So it is that differential. Is I saw that there was that differential in like confidence and that power. And I kept role modeling and demonstrating that. And I think that message that you've shared in this amazing 6 weeks opportunity, people, if you haven't seen it, go back and watch the other episodes. It's just absolutely amazing, and how all of these thread comes together. And at the end of the day, empathy rising.
Yeah, for sure. And what's interesting is that as we go forward, and I know we're getting to the 15-minute mark, but to close it all out, I wanted to share some resources for everyone here. And also to kind of think about like some final thoughts that I have. So this work of shifting power, shifting from our design brain, from designing for to with, then to by, it requires us to deal with the psychological and social dimensions of oppression and subordination that happens. and it leaves people feeling inferior, isolated, cynical, and often angry. So like that story you were just telling me was that idea of like there was a power differential, somebody feels inferior and they feel isolated, right? So once you start sharing that power and saying you can have it, you have that power within yourself, it even shifts the conversation. So we have to redesign, at the end of the day, we have to redesign systems and programs and products that have that already have discrimination baked into them, but we have to need to redesign them. And so there's two things that I think about. We have to have empathy plus action, right? Going in line with what we've talked about. And the two resources that I want to share, Tanya Anasazi is amazing, great person that created this thing, and a number of other people with the Stanford D School did create liberatory design for equity processes. So it's incorporating, taking those steps from design, but starting to incorporate things like reflection and just trying to see what in the community is feedback that we can have that we take back home with us, so that we can learn, are we really making the impact that we hope to make? And then that's for like kind of a design process. And then, you know, when we're designing products and programs, but I also have a resource on my own personal website at amyjwilson.com called the Heart, the Head, the Hand framework. And this is a canvas and a framework that you can actually go into your organizations and start to redesign the organizations from the ground up. Because what I found is that the frameworks that I was looking at didn't exactly have that. So I'm happy to talk to you more about it. Reach out, and maybe we'll talk about it in a future session that we have. So those are two resources. Go to my website and learn that, and also liberatory design. And Kevin, do you want to talk about, just to close us up? We're a few minutes over, but want to talk about next week's session?
Yeah, we have a special guest next week. We've got Edwin joining us, who is just this incredible human being, an empathy leader, part of the empathy community. And Edwin is we're going to be talking about his journey into finding ways to scale empathy and building empathy circles and having conversation. We might even do a mini one on this show for you all to see what the empathy circle looks like. I'm really excited about that one.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And we're going to have other guests coming in. I think we're getting to that place where we don't want to just talk at you. We want to bring in amazing people into our community. So really looking forward to showing that to you next week. And Alex, thanks for chiming in. I just noticed a new feature where you can have an overlay with the chat, which is cool. So I think it's awesome. So I'll check you later. See you soon, and next Tuesday. Bye.
Bye.
Ciao.